Alright, we are on Chapter 2, and this is on Lesson 2.1, okay, Chapter 2, Lesson 1, and it's on percent of a number. Okay, so before you get started, you have to know the definition of a percent, and we went over that in class today, so you can read along with your notes, but I just wanted to reiterate it. So percent is parts per hundred out of 100, okay? Now, even if you look at the word percent, and you see that root word cent, okay, a century is 100 years, okay, percent, per 100. So what that means is whenever you see that percent sign, whatever that number is, it's always out of 100. There are two ways to find the percent of 100 in this lesson, and we're going to use the same example for both, so you can see that whatever way you end up doing it, you get the same answer. So the example is going to be 60% of 2,000. So say that there's 2,000 students in the middle school, okay, and you want to find out what 60% of the total number is. Okay, so say 60% of the 2,000 students' favorite music is, I don't know, R&B. Okay, but you want to see how much of those students is 60% of 2,000. Okay, so the first method is write the percent as a fraction. Okay, so how do you write a percent as a fraction? Well, it's always over 100, right? So you're going to take 60%, and to make it into a fraction, you just write 60 over 100, and you take away the percent sign. Okay? Next thing that you're going to do is you are going to multiply it. And what you're going to multiply it by is the total number here. So the total number in this case is 2,000. Okay? Because we want 60 out of 100, right, times 2,000, which is the total in this case. But again, remember, we want out of 100. But right now we have out of 2,000. Okay, so we're going to multiply by 2,000. Now, when you multiply by a whole number, we know that we're going to put it over 1 to make it into a fraction. Okay, so now you're going to multiply across. So it's going to be 60 times 2,000, okay, over 100 times 1. So 60 times 2,000 is 120,000. Now when you look at that, a way to do mental math, if you want to do it out, is if you look at this. 6 times 2 is 12, right? And then how many zeros are there? 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you add 4 zeros after 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's a trick that you guys can use. Now 100 times 1 is 100. Okay, so now we're going to have to divide that. And I actually have another trick for you guys to use. If the two numbers that you're dividing, if they have a 0 at the end of both of the numbers, see here and here, that means that they're divisible by 10 in this case. Okay, now since they're divisible by 10, what you can do is you can cross out the zeros. But, again, we can also cross out these two zeros. So, now we can see that these two numbers were divisible by 100, right? Because 100 has two zeros. So, again, we can cross out those two zeros. So, what we're left with is 1,200 over 1, or 1,200 over 1. Now, any number divided by 1 is itself, right? So your answer is 1,200. So 60% of 2,000 is 1,200. So like the example I said before, we are trying to figure out 60% of the 2,000 students' favorite music genre was R&B. So 60% of 2,000 is 1,200 students. So now we're going to do method 2. And method 2 says to write the percent as a decimal. Okay, so before we wrote the percent as a fraction. Now we're going to write it as a decimal. So we're going to do the same example as before. 60% of 2,000. Okay, now to change a percent into a decimal, there's a rule. you have to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. But when you look at this, there is no decimal, right? But you have to remember, if it's a whole number, the decimal always is at the right of the number. So it's going to be right here. Okay? So again, when you change a percent to a decimal, you have to move the decimal point 2 spaces. It's always 2 spaces to the left. So it's going to be 1, 2. A little X there, so that I know that's the new decimal. Okay? So what you end up getting is 0.60. Okay? So now we wrote our percent as a decimal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing as before when we turned it into a fraction. We multiplied it by 2,000. Okay? So we got 0.60 times 2,000. Now when you do the calculations out, so we did 2,000 times 60. Now, yes, it was 0.60 before, but when you multiply by a decimal, you take out the decimal, okay, and then you add it back in your answer later. So we did 2,000 times 60, okay, and it ended up getting 120,000, but we have to add the decimal point back in. So when you look at what we had in the first place, right, we had the decimal point here. So what you have to do is you have to see how many decimal places you moved from the right side. So if we're here, we moved how many spaces? 2. Okay, it's always from the right. So 1, 2. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for our answer down here. 1, 2. Okay, so now our answer is 1200.00, which is 1,200. Now I think that's the same answer as we had before. Let's see. Yes, it is. It's the same exact answer as we had. So what that means is that you can use any of the two methods that you want, okay, and you will always get the same answer. So again, you can use method 1, which is write the percent as a fraction, and then you multiply. Or you can write the percent as a decimal, okay, and then you multiply. So they're the same thing, it's just in different forms. But in both cases, we got the same answer. So you can use whatever you feel more comfortable with. So for this one, what I'm thinking is you can try it on your own by pressing the pause button, okay? And then when you're done, you press play, and then I will show you how you do it and what the answer is, okay? So press pause, try it on your own, and then press play again, and I'll show you how to do it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use the fraction method, okay? You can use the decimal method, that's fine, but I personally feel more comfortable using the fraction method. But again, you can use whatever you want, okay? And I can show it both ways. So 40%, I put that into a fraction form, so I put 40 over 100. Then I multiplied it by 70, okay? So 70 over 1. Now 40 times 70 is 2,800, right? Because 4 times 7 is 28 plus 2 zeros, right? So 2,800. 100 times 1 is 100. I'm going to use the cancellation method, okay, because in this case, both of these numbers are divisible by 100. So I can just cancel those zeros out. So now I ended up with 28 over 1, which is just 28. Okay, so your answer is 40% of 70 is 28. And you have to think of an example sometimes, and I used this example in class. I said, if I went to the shelter and there were 70 puppies, and I said, I'm coming and I'm taking 40% of them, okay, you want to know how many puppies I'm actually taking out of the 70. So in this case, I'm taking 28 puppies. And yeah, I'm not sharing. So here I'm going to do the decimal method for those of you that did it that way. So I had to change 40% into a decimal. Okay, so what I did was I took the decimal that's always on the right side in a whole number, and I moved it 2 places to the left. Okay, and when I did that, I got 0.40. Then I multiplied it by 70. Okay, here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 70 times 0.40. So you have to remember, again, when you're multiplying by decimal, you can take out the decimal and add it back in later. So I multiplied 40 times 70, and I got 2,800, okay? But I forgot to add the decimal back in. So what I have to do is I have to see how many decimal places I moved, okay, from the right side. So here again, I went 1, 2. I moved 2. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. 1, 2. Okay, so my answer is 28.00, which is the same thing as 28. Now I think that's the same answer I got, right? Yep, same answer. So I took 28 puppies. 28 little puppies.